Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Trading the Close. My name is Lawton and I'm joined by Drew Dosek here to talk you through the end of the day and all the actions in the markets. So today, Drew, talk me through it. What happened?
A little bit of whiplash going on, especially from yesterday to today on the 10-year yield. I'm going to save that for the chart when we go over it here in a moment. But man, incredible action today. A lot of the big stocks moving up. And so we got a lot of green on the screen today. Let's take a look at the heat map. So we see just the Dow Jones up 0.73% right here. We have the NASDAQ up 1.31%, the S&P up 0.92%. Oil's also up again. Gold pushing up, getting near those all-time highs at $3,000 mark, is getting very close to. Bitcoin, not much to speak about that today. Basically chopped sideways. We'll look at the chart here in a moment too. Mainly staying in the same area. Big boys, as you see here on the chart, Apple and Nvidia leading the way. Tesla had a great day too, up 5.33%. APP's up 30%, or was up 30% earlier. Fantastic moves on stocks with earnings. So it's really incredible. But I've got something really cool to show you on the SPX, some research I was doing the other day. So let's look into that. All right, one thing about, and this will be more of an educational piece, one thing that the markets like to do is what they have just done. You'll often find this so many times on the market. You'll see a pattern that happens up above, that same pattern happens below. The SPX, something like that is happening right here. You see, when we had this move down, we had this one pivot here, and then we made a lower low, and then we made another lower low. Then we had a 6% move up, made a high, came down, made a lower high, then made another lower high. And what are we doing now? We're starting to break out of this wedge. So what this implies, if we do break out to the upside and confirm above, we potentially have an opportunity for a 6% move, which is going to put the price of SPX well within this blue parallel again. So this is really fascinating. We'll have to see tomorrow, though, if price can confirm above today's close.
Cool.
Yeah, really neat.
Sorry, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Drew. I'm just looking at this. So how do you get that measured move of 6%? Just because symmetry or?
Exactly. Yeah. So again, just to drive home the point, you see this is almost just like an inverse of what is happening over here. And basically just measure from this pivot to this pivot, and that gives us a 6% move. So we can anticipate something like that occurring, again, if it confirms above. There's so many times the markets like to trick you and fool you, and that's why we have bull traps and bear traps too. And a bull trap would be something like this, where price comes up here, then reverses back down and comes down and sells hard. So we could still have something like that happen. That's why we need to see a confirming move up. And if that happens, then 6% is going to be the target on my mind until we see major resistance. All right, that leads me into the next chart. And we have the 10-year yield. This is really where all the story is today, because PPI data was released this morning and it came in hotter than expected. Expectations were 0.3% increase, and we actually had a 0.4% increase. You would think then the yields would be going higher because inflation is higher. However, that's not the case. And the reason for that is the PCE data is what the Fed pays most attention to for inflation. And there's key components within the PPI data, such as healthcare, financial services, and airlines, as well as something that touches us all, insurance. And all four of those components came in weaker, implying that inflation is in essence going to be going down in the near term. So what we have here on the 10-year yield, yesterday you saw we were poking right back up in this parallel, looking for an opportunity to potentially go higher and reach that 5% target. But notice, just as I was talking about the SPX, we did not confirm into that parallel, and we got rejected today. This rejection has just given euphoria to the markets because money is going to be easier to access. If inflation does come down, then the stocks are going to continue to go higher. So watch the 10-year yield over the next coming days, especially for any new financial data that's going to be released, particularly the PCE. And that brings me into gold and silver. Gold, as I mentioned too, as you see here, almost touching $3,000. We're not quite at 2 days ago's high, but we're retesting that area at the top. Potentially can move higher there. Silver, consolidating still, just as I said was going to happen over the last few days, but we are starting to get to the higher end of that range.
So taking a look at gold, I see that it's trading in an upsloping parallel. We know that upsloping parallels tend to have a break towards the downside, favors a break to the downside. But what happens if we break above that parallel?
There could be two things that happen. One we'll see on APP later on, or you can have a bull trap, much like I pointed out a moment ago, where price can go up here and almost exhaust itself, almost like a last little bit of gas in the tank to push itself up. It can get exhausted, then start retreating back down into the parallel. So there's two things. You can either rock it up or just a little bull trap and then come right back down into the parallel, potentially even breaking to the downside once that move ends. So that's a good question there, Lawton. All right, so next up we've got U.S. oil. We haven't covered this in the last few days because really there wasn't too much to cover. Oil has just bounced up 3 days in a row, fell yesterday, caught support right here on this inclining trend line. Current price is at $71.37 on U.S. oil. I would anticipate, should this trend line hold, we should be able to push right back up to the downsloping area of that parallel, which is going to be in between $74 and $75. And that leads me into the next chart with Bitcoin. As I said, not too much has changed. You see this trend line on the yellow trend line that's moving across the screen, and we still have pivot to pivot to pivot to pivot to pivot. Price is staying above there nicely, currently at $96,200. We should, as long as this area holds and if the inflation continues down, risk goes up, Bitcoin could still move up to the top end of that parallel channel. And here's a couple trades I wanted to go over. Some of the biggest movers after the bell yesterday and how the trading action corresponded today. So we see here, first up, TTD. This stock just got hammered, down 30% today. Unbelievable fall. You can see right here, price closed yesterday above $120, open today right around 84. Price continued to sell down, reaching as low right under $81, but you see here it closed at $81.92. There are a lot of areas of support right here. However, one thing to pay attention to, whenever a stock falls as much as 30%, there's a lot of investors that are caught in this position up here, maybe even higher, up here near the all-time highs. So what happens to those individuals? If they're in too heavy, you can get margin called. And what happens when you're in margin call? You have to get rid of your shares or add more capital to get back to even in your account. If you don't have more capital to add, you got to start selling those shares. So that's why I think we didn't see a big bounce today on TTD. I will likely see, once those margin calls are all over with and taken care of, usually last 3 to 5 days, I think selling will subdue, and then we will have a nice bounce up, because this area has got tremendous support. We have trend line coming in for this pivot. We have another inclining trend line that we've pierced and closed beneath today. And then we also have the 618 Fibonacci retrace right here at just under $80 at $79.66. So be watching for that over the next couple days. A pierce at $80 could be a great buying point for TTD for a swing trade.
Yeah, and when I take a look at these swing trades and potential, especially when something's dropped, 30+% in a single day, the trouble I have is finding a target. So let's say it's just a perfect buy level. How does somebody, who buys at that point, let's say it's a perfect entry, how do they find a target where to get out?
To get out? Yeah, good question. See, what happened today was it was a lead ball bounce. The price dropped down. Whenever something falls 20+% and it hits a great level of support, you should see a reaction moving up of about 10% of what it fell. So you should see a move up $3 to $5 on a $30 fall. We didn't see that today. We saw a bounce up of nearly about $1, and that was it. And so what that tells me, though, is that this area still has a lot of support, but to find those areas, you have to watch the price action after you've gotten in, and then wait for that to play out. And if it's just not bouncing the way it should, like this one did today, I exited the trade. We did take this as a day trade in the day trading room, and I was trying to get $2 or $3 out of it, as a normal bounce should happen with a big fall like that, and it just didn't happen. So that told me that a lot of investors are stuck in this position and just selling just to get rid of it so that they can get it off their sheets and get into another trade.
Cool. Let's go take a look at APP.
Yeah,
the other big mover.
Last chart of the day, and what a move on APP. As you see here, closed today 471.67, up 24%. And this was on the back of a previous earnings that catapulted the stock in a similar scenario, up 30 or 40%. So APP in the near term is extremely overbought. But one of the amazing things about technicals, I had this pattern over here when I watched the first earnings just that happened right before this one. I created this parallel that contained all the price action. Well, that parallel stopped here. And then today I extended that parallel all the way out, keeping the same parameters from the original one. And where did price stop today? Right in the middle of that parallel channel. I've been telling you guys this is so powerful with the middle area of those parallel channels. And today you notice too, price retreated, came back underneath that parallel, but then closed back within the parallel. That's very bullish for APP. As long as it stays in this parallel, we got a chance to continue moving higher. However, once that parallel breaks, as Lawton mentioned earlier, upsloping parallels tend to break to the downside. Support area is right there at 417.64.
Cool, Drew. No more questions, but I have a very exciting announcement to make to all of you at home. On Monday, as you know, markets are closed, but we're having an exclusive event at Verified Investing this Monday from 9 to 10 o'clock, a live Q&A called Get Smart with Verified Investing. Drew, myself, Dr. B, Ben, Gareth, all of your favorites are going to be there to answer your questions live. So again, that's going to be this Monday from 9 to 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
Drew, if you join me, thank you guys so much for joining me. This is it for us, but before we end, we have a word from our sponsor, Legacy Academy. Alright guys, so I've leveled up here. On the leaderboard, I have moved up to number 197. So I've cracked that 200. Let's see how far I can go.